Welcome to the Mercury Center Stage podcast, where we get to know the individuals on stage and those behind the scenes. Thanks for joining us. I am Brian Ritter. I am the Executive Director of the Mercury Chamber Orchestra, and today I am pleased to welcome Mercury's keyboardist, Mario Aschauer. Welcome to the podcast, Mario.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we just began Mercury's 20th anniversary season, and your work with Mercury began, I think, about 3 years ago, but it wasn't actually as a performer. And indeed, you are an avid performer. You're also a musicologist, among other things. But you also have an amazing instrument collection. And about 3 years ago, you were kind enough to loan us one of your forte piano instruments.
Oh, yeah.
A concert that we were doing of Beethoven's Second Piano Concerto. And it was such a marvelous result. I wanted to ask you a little bit about that instrument and your entire collection. Could you talk us through a little bit of that?
Sure. So that instrument is a typical, very early 19th century fortepiano. I guess that's what we call these earlier types pianos nowadays, fortepianos. That is a copy of an instrument made by the Viennese fortepiano maker Anton Walter, who was probably one of the most central figures in this amazing piano development that was going on around 1800 in Vienna. And I guess today he is most famous for Mozart's piano that he built and Mozart bought in the early 1780s and kept for his entire life and must have loved very much because his dad wrote back to his sister when he was visiting in Vienna that Wolfgang's piano had been carried out of the house and to concert places several times already in the past 2 weeks. So that just tells you that Mozart really liked that piano. And then I have two harpsichords, Franco-Flemish instruments, like, one of those typical two manual instruments that you often see. This harpsichord is super special to me because, first of all, the builder who made it has this philosophy of using old wood for the most important acoustical part, which is the soundboard. So the soundboard in my instrument is actually was cannibalized, if you will, from a piano that was built in the 1820s and was at that point already 100 years old. So it's almost like an 18th century instrument, if you will, and it's also really pretty. I think Mercury audiences have seen it in concert before. It's got this amazing Chinese style decoration. So I'm
absolutely
super
gorgeous.
happy. Yeah, I will say this is by far not my first instrument. I've had many over the entire 15 years of my career, but it is definitely the best and the most beautiful. And I have an Italian style instrument that Mercury audiences also have seen on occasion when we do more Italianate repertoire. That instrument is by the same maker, Joe Katzman, in Haarlem in the Netherlands. And that is based on an instrument that was built around 1599. And it's a single manual instrument with two 8-foot registers and completely strung with brass strings, whereas the other instrument that I have is more typically half brass strings and half iron strings.
Such a wonderful, beautiful collection. Soon after that first connection that we had through your forte piano, you did join the ensemble as a performer. I'm wondering if you remember your very first concert with Mercury.
One of the very first ones was a program in the Miller Outdoor Theater, of all places, and I thought that was super cool. Because as a harpsichordist, you don't really get to play in an outdoor theater a lot. In fact, I think that was my first time ever. And I'd been, at the time, I guess I'd been living in Houston for a year at the time, and I'd been to the theater, but to dance performances or theater, but never to music performance, and particularly not early music. And so I thought that was really cool, and that's very memorable to me for sure.
And thousands of people coming out for those concerts. I
Oh
mean,
yes,
it's
yes,
just
absolutely.
awesome.
It's an ideal situation in so many ways. It was fun to. I think that was also the first time we ever put a microphone into the harpsichord to, make it audible outside, and so that was very interesting too. But every aspect of it was just so much fun, and I really really enjoyed that.
I wanted to ask a little bit more about yourself. Where did you grow up?
So I was born in Austria, actually, and that's also where I grew up. I was born in the small-ish town of Linz, which is when you imagine Austria, this like chicken leg shaped country in the midst of Europe, then this is kind of between Salzburg, which is very, very close to the German border, and Vienna, which is very, very close to the Hungarian border, and Linz is somewhere right in between. And yes, it's the Linz that Mozart wrote the Linz Symphony in. So that's where I was born, and that's also, by the way, one of the main Bruckner cities, of course, because Bruckner was born in a village just outside of Linz. And fun fact, I just recently realized that from my parents used to live in a high rise, and from my childhood bedroom window, I could actually see the church that Bruckner was born at, because his dad was a school teacher, so he lived in the church complex, and so I can actually see the church tower of that.
Oh,
And so that I had to grow 39 years old to actually realize that, though. But hey, rather late than never.
well, it just
And
must have been so wonderful to grow up. Beethoven, Mozart, yeah, Bruckner, Mahler, just all of these towering figures in our field. What were those early inspirations of yours to start making music yourself?
well, actually, it took a while because I was always fascinated with the organ, and forever I wanted organ lessons, and I come from a working class family. No one in my family is even close to being a musician. They do enjoy music, but they never go to concerts or anything. So it was really just me. And I guess when I told my parents, I wanna learn how to play the organ, they just thought it was crazy. But then I finally talked my mom into getting me lessons, and in the Austrian music school system at the time, you couldn't actually start with organ, but you had to take piano first for a few years, and even that wasn't possible immediately. So I had to start with recorder when I was in primary school, and I remember that very well because I just hated the recorder, and because I wanted to play the piano, and and I remember that my recorder teacher actually had my mom come in and talk to her, and she said, I think your son really has no talent for music.
Wow.
And but I was so excited about the piano that after a while I actually did get to start piano. I was 10 though, so it was actually very very late. And then turns out that I did show a little bit of talent for music, I think, and that's when I also got more into organ and church music, which I think defined my musical career a lot. In that, when you think about it, a lot of the main musicians in music history, main composers, were church musicians in one capacity or another. And what that means is, and church music in Austrian music universities to this day is an incredibly wide field of study. You have to play organ, you have to know how to improvise, you have to compose, you have to conduct. So it's very very musical, and very very all round type of education. And so I think that kind of shaped also my idea of what it means to be a musician, that you're not only a solo performer, but you're also an accompanist, but you also compose and you also improvise and you also conduct. And I think that was a really important aspect in my early musical experience.
The early thought of wanting to play the organ, did that come as a youngster attending church, or how
Yeah.
did that come?
Yeah, my grandpa took me to church, and I remember always just being taken away by this gigantic sound, and I just thought that was so cool. I want to do that too. And I remember dreaming about it and thinking about the organ and the sound all day long. And so yeah, absolutely. But it was through attending church, because as I said, the only concert we ever attended was on New Year's Day, uh, the Vienna Philharmonic New Year's concert, and that was in my grandparents' living room.
Yeah.
That was tradition, but that was pretty much all that was in terms of concerts.
Well, and all those fabulous waltzes and things. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I did go to ballroom school, by the way. So I grew up a true Austrian kid,
So you start playing piano,
Mhm.
and that carries through your school years. So when did you start to think that, boy, I really want to make this my life's work? When did you realize that, and how did that come about?
I think that was in middle school. Uh, I said that it all started quite late, but then everything went very quickly. I think in hindsight, I was just taking these piano lessons, but I was just so excited about it and so passionate that I think I made quite considerable progress. So that my dad then had the idea to enroll me at the local conservatory, the Bruckner Conservatory at the time. And many of these steps for me were the professional music education was always something other people did, other people that were better and had more talent. And so I guess every step of the way was always a little bit of a surprise. That my dad took me to one of the professors, and he said, "Well, I mean, this kid is not a very good pianist for sure, but he is such a musical talent. I'm gonna accept him into my studio." And so that started, and then I attended a high school that's very special, and it actually doesn't exist any longer in this way. At the time, it was a school for highly gifted musical kids, and you had to go for 5 years to high school, but in return, school was always over at 1 in the afternoon, and the rest of the time was spent at conservatory, taking classes, practicing, taking lessons with your professor. And the school also had a choir, and so we had choir rehearsal every day, which for in hindsight, that was just the most amazing thing, to because the choir was at the time, internationally renowned. So we sang all over the world. I remember, I got to that school in September, and in November was the first tour to London to record Bruckner's F minor Mass with London Symphony and Franz Weser Möst, who's now in Cleveland, conducting. So like in 2 months, we were just thrown into the cold water, and overnight, basically, we had to kind of function like professional musicians, and that I think was also extremely important, for my training and for my upbringing, because the musical professionalism just came so naturally, like overnight, and boom, and now you're on, and you just have to figure out, and I learned, that it takes a lot of work, but I just was also so passionate about it. So it was just fine to spend my entire high school career, really, really intensively working on music in pretty much every aspect that you can imagine.
This great experience that you're having in high school, and then you're off to university. where did you study?
Well, the great thing about this system was that I was already basically enrolled in college when I was 15. And I was not in any kind of prep program, but that was the actual degree program. And this was the high school also had another aspect to it that, I started to get really interested in conducting. And so I enrolled in the conservatory's conducting program. And at the same time, at my school, a new teacher took over the music program at my high school, and he wasn't really interested in orchestral conducting at all. And so, more or less by coincidence, I got to conduct a concert, and this went really well. So that both the principal and my music teacher decided that I was just going to run the school orchestra. And the school orchestra, I mean, young musicians between 15 and 20 that are all in conservatory programs. So orchestra was actually quite good, and that way I got to conduct a whole bunch of symphonic, choral, orchestral repertoire before I graduated high school. And so I got my first degree, which was actually in conducting, before I graduated high school. And then, of course, was the question, okay, so what to do now? And with the whole conducting thing, I had to take like an elective, and as I thought, harpsichord is pretty useful as a conductor. Where I was thinking Mozart operas and even Rossini operas, where conductors often play harpsichord. So I thought, I should do that, and that way I got into contact with one of my most important teachers. He passed away about 10 years ago, August Hume, who was, one of that early guard of early music specialists. It's like, the Gustav Leonhard, Arnon Kur, like this kind of, early experimental people, and he was one of them. And as I was graduating high school, of course, I discussed with him, so, what to do next. I enrolled at the Salzburg Music University to do yet another degree in conducting, but it just didn't feel very fulfilling. And so he said, well, you know what, you should move to Vienna and just take a few classes in musicology, because, early music, it's kind of good to know, how to deal with sources and have a little bit of a deeper understanding on a scholarly level. So you should do that. So I did. And I just loved living in Vienna. Ultimately, I ended up living in Vienna for almost 15 years. And it was just the most amazing time. And so I started musicology. I started taking classes, and a few classes turned into a master's and a doctorate, because somehow I just felt, yeah, this is kind of the right thing to do. On the side, I was still conducting and playing harpsichord and organ a lot, and so there I was. And then I even got a job in Vienna right after my PhD, working for the Austrian Academy of Sciences, which is the biggest Austrian research institution, as a part-time researcher. And so I had the perfect mix that I'm basically, to this very day, am seeking and am loving. The work as both performer and scholar, kind of on their interface, where scholarly work and research results kind of inspire musical performance, and vice versa. So that's kind of what I'm interested in, and so this how it started in Vienna.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you had just years of that immersion of both of these things that is so
Mhm.
fascinating. And now, was it that teacher that was that big inspiration into early music, or has your interest really been much broader than that all along?
Well, he just saw things very differently than any of my other teachers. Although I will say my piano teacher, whenever he taught the well-tempered clavier, for example, he'd always give us the metronome markings that he had deducted from Gustav Leonhard's recordings. So he was interested, and remained so for the rest of his life. He was the you would see him at every concert, at literally every early music festival in Austria. He'd be there because he just really liked it. But he was a modern pianist, and so it already started with that he pointed me towards questions related to musical performance that just go beyond your typical, well, all you have to do is get really fast fingers and you play all your list, and that's basically what it is to be a pianist. He was extremely philosophical and just interested in the context of the repertoire that we're playing and that we're calling classical music, if you will. No, and the other teacher, August Huma, just pushed it even further, and made me really question everything about, I remember and now that I have been teaching myself for quite some time, there's so many things that I now remember from lessons with him. There was this, I will never forget this one lesson where I walked in and we started and I played a Haydn sonata for him, and it was a slow movement, and I literally played 6-8 notes, and he stopped me, and then there was great silence, and he said, "Nah, you can't play that way." and I thought, dude, I just only played 6/8 notes. And already it was fundamentally wrong. But his love to give every note a meaning, and not, nothing was ever just like that, I think made a very, very deep impression on me. And as I'm saying, I recently found myself saying something very similar, and I just had to laugh out so hard because I'm like, no, I'm turning into my teacher.
I wanted to ask you, you had said that, in high school already, you were doing a lot of conducting, and, a great part of that work is deciding what music to conduct or what music to perform with the ensemble. I'm curious how much of a role you played in that, and if you recall maybe one of those particular pieces you prepared and performed together.
Yeah, they let me choose all the programming, and like so often, and I think now it's even stronger that people, particularly with young ensembles, would like you as a director to choose repertoire that's probably way too hard. Mm. And the same thing was going on back then and there. They wanted me to program, said, "Oh, don't you think we should do a tone poem by Richard Strauss?" And I was like, "No, I want to do a program with string orchestra." At the same time, I was most of my inspiration in conducting training was really to, in Austria, that was easy to do, to go to rehearsals of the big names and just, look what they're doing and how they're producing what they do. I'm not, unfortunately, old enough to have seen much of Karajan's work, but when I was studying in Salzburg, I think it was his 10th death anniversary, and they had this major exhibition about him, and they put all their archival recordings from his rehearsals in Salzburg at the disposal of anyone who was interested. And so I remember spending an entire summer in Salzburg with a whole bunch of scores and just listening to what was literally hundreds of hours of rehearsal with Karajan. And then, of course, I'm, at the time, I don't know, I was what, 18 or so? I just wanted to try that too. Of course, my orchestra wasn't the Berlin Philharmonic, obviously, but I just wanted to see if, some of the things that he did and how he did them, if that also worked with my group. And, turned out it did.
Yeah. Well,
and so...
And it seemed like his style really evolved over his conducting career as well. I can remember there were very famous footage of him conducting Rosenkavalier in the pit, and it's in his later period. He's quite old, and he's conducting Rosenkavalier. His eyes are closed. His kind of head is down, and he's sort of kneading, the beat. And
Right.
something gets off a little bit, and immediately his eyes go open, and he starts to conduct a very clear beat, and everything locks back in. But it's just one of these examples, of him, but of all conducting that, just the magic of it, the power of it, is so fascinating. So to have, just even that training of all of that archival footage, I can imagine being incredibly influential and powerful. So.
Yes, it was, because I always just wanted to know how, because I could hear that something's going on and that there's a vision there, but I just wanted to know how they do it.
Yeah.
And particularly with Karajan, because he really created particularly a string sound that's really unprecedented. Now, I guess nowadays one would say it's also kind of outdated now, and I guess modern aesthetics have moved on a little bit from that ideal, but I was above all interested in the technical aspect of it. Like how do you do that? Because and I think that's an important question for any music making. Like it's not, I'm telling my students too, it's not that I'm saying you have to do it exactly this way, but I want you to be able to do it if you wanted to. And I think that's a very, very important aspect in a musician's training, to really try to be in control. And then it's like buying, I don't know, 100 different colors that you can use for your painting, instead of just like, oh, I'm only going to paint red and blue anyway, So I think that's a very important aspect in musicians training.
Now you have referenced your teaching, and you are a professor of music at Sam Houston State University. Tell us a little bit about some of the courses you teach and some of the things that you try to get the students really excited about.
Well, this position that I was hired in was brand new at the time, and the idea behind it was to have someone at best with a dual degree in both musicology and some kind of early music instrument performance, that a person that could, on the one hand, teach in the musicology area, so mainly music history, I suppose, and graduate classes in that field, but at the same time build a center for early music that brings early music to campus in teaching, in performance, and also in research. And so in many ways, I guess that's kind of the reason why I'm there, because I pretty much fit that bill with my own training and my experience. And for me, this is really a unique position. It's not a lot of positions in the world really that are like that ask for exactly this, the work in scholarship and performance at the interface of the two. And so I really, really enjoy doing that. And so what I teach is, I do teach music history, also because I want to stay in touch with the undergraduate population that we have at our school. I run an early music vocal ensemble that's been going very well for about 6 semesters now. And right now it's because of the situation that we live in, also quite surprisingly, I'm also serving as interim orchestra director actually at my school this year. And so I'm doing that too. So, but for me, it's ideal because it's all the things really that I love to do. And so I enjoy that quite a bit. Can't wait to see what we're going to do with the orchestra this year.
Well, it seems like such a perfect fit. And speaking of research and scholarship, over the last several months, you've been advancing some of your own work and bringing it to YouTube and creating a channel. And your first episode is focused on Beethoven's Diabelli variations.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that project.
Well, because of my interest in the interface of performance and scholarship, a lot of it is dedicated also to the question, okay, because I mean, let's face it, all we ultimately know or have from early music is little black dots on paper. That's how it mainly survives. We have no recordings. We obviously have no direct testimony, no direct teaching. So this is what we're dealing with, and that's why I'm really interested in musical texts and what they mean really in the context not only of you know, musical notation has developed over a long period of 1,000 years to come to about what it is today, and it has many drawbacks, you know, because it's very focused on pitches and rhythms, and those are it's a very rigid format, I guess, to record music. And so, as a performer, my first question is, do we actually play like that? So it's like, is each of those little black dots really the same? Because on the page, it is the same, you know? And I guess most people will immediately answer, no, of course not. Well, okay. So how do we play it then? And this is where the scholarship part comes in, and I'm trying with other types of sources to figure out, okay, when, for example, Beethoven writes variations on a waltz, what does a waltz mean in 1819?
Mm.
And what's its context? And I think that in by following this kind of method and question asking, we can get much closer to what this music actually means, and it's just so it makes it so much more exciting. It's almost like when I play it now, having read contemporary newspapers and reports and treatises from the time, it's almost like a movie that's going on in my head.
Wow.
And that
So,
makes the music super exciting.
so
And
really putting yourself back into that time through that research, and then helping to make very informed decisions about maybe how fast something's played, maybe how loud or soft something is played, and then helping to notate that in a modern language that helps other performers
yeah,
more
exactly.
more adequately perform a particular work. Would that be accurate?
Yes. However, important for me is that it's not for the sake of accuracy,
Mm.
at least not primarily, but it's just really to say, well, the what's on that page with the black dots, that's only really only a part of the music. And so therefore I think it's kind of necessary, not because of accuracy, but it's almost like you buy a novel and every other line is not there.
Yeah.
You can say, yeah, I gotta get the gist of it, but I kind of like to see also the other lines. And maybe because otherwise some of the meaning is lost.
That's it. Yeah,
And
it's
then I just find out that the novel then is so much more interesting if you have all the lines, or at least let's say two-thirds. It's better than only half.
yes. So now it's time for a segment we're calling Favorite Five. And I wanted to start off asking you what your favorite book is.
Man, immediately it's like 10, 12. But I think it would come down to two. One would be Zen and the Art of Archery by Eugen Herrigel, which is really a very old Zen classic, I guess, because it got me hooked into that way of thinking, and it was very, very important for my life. And I've given it to dozens of students, so I think that for sure is an important book. And the other one, if I had to, like, let's say, name a novel, then I'm really a huge fan of Austrian author Heimito von Doderer, and one of his most sarcastic, funniest, wittiest books is The Merovingians, and it's actually available in English translation. It's incredibly funny and almost outrageous. So I do recommend that.
What is your favorite beverage?
Espresso. I don't drink, but I do drink a lot of espresso, and when it comes with a Topo Chico, then it's just perfect.
What is your favorite movie or television series?
I think there is a Korean movie that's called, I hope I get this right, Spring, S- Summer, Fall, Winter, and Spring Again. Uh, and I think it's available on Amazon Prime. I think that's a very, very beautiful movie.
What is your favorite travel destination?
Um, if I had to pick one, I guess it would be Italy. Italy is my country. That's where I would live if I could.
I was very fortunate. My husband and I had a visit there 2 summers ago, and we absolutely fell in love with it. Now we were in Rome for a few days and up in the Tuscany region for a few days. What is your favorite part of Italy?
Oh, every time I go, I try to not go by plane or train, but by car, or sometimes even by bike. Because what I really love about Italy is, I mean, I love Bologna and Florence and Venice and Rome, of course, but I particularly love the small villages along the coast, where there's no tourists and there's just Italians, and you can go to literally any little village restaurant and eat um, the most amazing pizza with 3 ingredients or pasta with 2 ingredients.
Yeah.
To me, that's kind of the coolest lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Those big cities were just awe-inspiring,
Yeah.
but getting out in the countryside, man, nothing better than that.
Uh,
Um, so a really hard one here. I would say probably impossible, but what is your favorite classical music recording?
well, I can tell you what one of the most, for me, enlightening or world changing was, and that's anything by 19th century pianist Vladimir Pachman, particularly his Chopin. That has literally changed two worlds for me. One because I never really liked Chopin, and ever since I heard him play it, I'm absolutely in love with it. And second of all, the way he plays the piano is the most ideal keyboard playing that I can think of. It's just beyond imaginable.
Wonderful. So there we go. There's our favorite five. That was fun. Thank you, Mario, for your recommendations. So Mario, I wanted to ask you a little bit. Mercury audiences see you in front of the keyboard on stage, but what many might not know is that you are also really into lifting.
Yes.
Um, and I wondered if you'd tell us a little bit about this.
Sure. Um, I've throughout my childhood, everything and youth, everything was about music. I was I guess what you would call a fat kid, and that was and literally any kind of sports was just an absolute no go. Also, we don't in Austria have this kind of high school sports tradition. We don't do that at all. My physical education stopped, I think, when I was 15, and that was the end of it. And then later, also fun fact, I got really into, I wanted to lose weight, and I just wanted to become more active. And since I'd always really liked dancing and ballroom dancing, so by complete coincidence, I became a Zumba instructor.
Wow.
And worked, and I want to say quite successfully actually for a few years, first in Vienna, and then even here in Houston when I moved here. I found a place, and I taught for a couple of years, and had just the best time of my life.
Amazing.
And then I just again, by complete coincidence, I was listening to an audiobook because I drive a lot between Houston and Huntsville, and somehow, I don't know, on my phone I ran into this book about weightlifting, and so at first I thought, really, oh, whatever. So I was just listening to it, and a half hour into it, I was just so struck by the thinking that went into the book, and how a lot of the things that I very very fundamentally believe in are the same in the lifting community. The thought of training, the thought of voluntarily like going through a little bit of hardship to make steps forward. And it also explained really well the incredible importance of strength for the health of the human body. And at the time, I had just lost a whole bunch of weight, and I started squatting, and I remember my first squat was 95 pounds.
What is it
and
now?
and then I got into training, and I got a coach, and I train at home. Here in my house, we actually have a dedicated room for a gym, and in the apartment that I used to live, I literally had a power rack in my bedroom because I just got into this, and I recently squatted 385, and it was not the most I can do. I think I can do 4 plates, so 405, and that I think I'm a little proud of it. Although for a guy my size, a 405 squat is really nothing special in the lifting community. Most guys actually warm up with that weight, but from where I started, and also being a musician, and there's all these thoughts about, oh, are you not ruining your hands? Spoiler alert, no, they're just as good as ever. But it has changed my life completely. Now, for the first time in my life, I understand what strength actually is, and how incredibly helpful in all kinds of aspects of everyday life.
I just want to conclude our conversation today asking you a little bit about music, and particularly during this really crazy, uncertain time that we're all living through. Could you comment a little bit about what music has done for you over these last several months?
Sure. I guess that, I mean, of course, like with everything else, there's a lot of ways to look at things. On the one hand, of course, what's been happening to musicians and artists in general has been nothing short of scary, obviously. And I feel with so many colleagues who are not quite in the position that we folks in that are teaching are, because the teaching has always given us a little bit more stability, I guess, than if you're just if you're mainly focusing on freelancing. So my heart really goes out to those folks, because I can't begin to imagine how difficult and scary that must be. At the same time, personally, I've felt that all of this development has also a lot of good to it, because first of all, I think it has accelerated some of the developments that were already out there. Let's say one of the best examples for me is the CD as a medium. When you think about how the CD has shaped our musical culture in a way that's really, neither very artistic nor very creative nor anything, because, there's only so many minutes you can put on it. And CD companies only want one composer on it. and has led to, us all recording, I don't know, the entire first volume of the Well-Tempered Clavier, or the entire English suites, or the, stuff that, I think if you had told Bach, you know what, I'm going to record all your English suites, he would have thought it's just the most crazy idea ever. And so, with the move to more to online, also, I guess, with the possibility to combine audio and video, I think that development has already been there, but the current situation has accelerated it to go in that direction. And I've students talk to me all the time about their worries about the future. And I said, as musicians, we are the specialists in the field of the show must go on. Mm. And I mean, who, if not us, can figure it out? And what gives me confidence in all of this is, I mean, music is as old as mankind, and mankind has always searched for music and has a thirst for music every day. So I think that's the greatest starting point for whatever is to come. I don't think music is dead. I don't think it will die anytime soon. And I think the current situation just makes us, be again a little more creative in the ways we do things and in the formats that we produce. And I just wanna think about it positively and see it as a chance rather than a threat. And a chance that honestly I'm actually kind of excited about.
Well, I think a beautiful place to end. I could not agree more with you. Although we can't wait to see you back on stage with all of your wonderful colleagues at Mercury. Yeah. But thank you so much for the conversation today, Mario.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Mercury Center Stage podcast. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can leave comments at our website. We'll be back again soon. Until then, keep listening to great music.